Discover 12 spine-chilling curse locations in Colorado that will haunt you forever. The night descended like a curtain in Denver, cloaking the neighborhood in cold, dark whispers. Fog rolled in thick and heavy, slithering through the streets, wrapping houses in a shroud of unease. Sarah pulled into her driveway, exhaustion tugging at her bones after a grueling late shift at the diner. But tonight felt different. Something was off. As she stepped out of the car, her gaze was snagged by a shadow across the street. A figure stood unmoving, peering into the depths of her home, hidden in the shadows. Instinct kicked in. Could it be the lurking presence of one of those cursed places they'd brushed off as mere folklore? Her heart raced, a cold sweat trickling down her spine. Sarah swallowed hard, fumbling for her keys as the figure remained chillingly still. Was it a night jogger? A stray animal? No, it felt like something else entirely. She hurried to the door, the air thickening with an ancient dread she couldn't understand. Every instinct screamed at her, protect Jake and Lily at all costs. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with tension. Jake was deep in conversation with Marcus, the reclusive neighbor notorious for sharing spine-tingling tales about the cursed locations rumored to haunt Colorado. There was an electric energy around them, something wild and dangerous that had never been there before. Sarah caught snippets about missing people, cursed spirits, and shadows that consumed the unguarded. "Mom, you should hear what Marcus is saying. This one time, he said people vanished without a trace right from—" Jake's voice was thick with enthusiasm, but Sarah's stomach twisted in knots. "Jake, let's not get carried away with those stories," she interrupted, trying to veil her panic. But he was drawn to Marcus like a moth to flame, captivated by the thrill of the unknown. The room felt smaller, heavier, as if it too were holding its breath. Before she could settle her mind, a local news flash crackled through the old radio. Multiple disappearances have been reported in the vicinity, with no leads on the whereabouts of the individuals. Her heart dropped. The unsettling feeling of paranoia seized her. The stories were no longer distant myths, but chilling realities. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As Sarah's unease mounted, shadows danced outside the window, merging with the terrifying fog. The sinister stories turned too real. Jake listened intently, his curiosity slipping into obsession. With every tale Marcus spun, the line separating fact from fiction blurred. That evening, Sarah felt the house shift in a way she couldn't explain. Lily's soft footsteps echoed in an uncanny silence, but then they stopped. Panic surged like raw electricity when she realized Lily was nowhere to be found. "What? Lily?" Her voice reverberated in the house, thick with urgency. A chill swept back through the fog outside as she rushed to the window. The same figure she had seen earlier lingered in the distance. It stood as a dark sentinel, waiting. A tumble of dread cascaded through her mind. How much danger had they unknowingly invited in? Sarah clutched her heart, wrestling between fear and a desperate need for answers. As the mystery deepened, she knew they were entwined with something far darker than they ever imagined. The true horrors hidden among Colorado's cursed locations awaited them, creeping closer with every heartbeat. Would they uncover the truth before the shadows consumed everything they loved? The floorboards creaked beneath her as Sarah dashed through the house, calling for Lily. The shadows felt thicker now, wrapping around her, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. Panic clawed at her throat. "Lily, where are you?" The sound of her own voice echoed back, twisted and haunting. She bolted to the living room where Jake stood frozen, eyes wide with horror. "I thought you were watching her," he shouted, his youthful confidence slipping into fear. "She was right here." Sarah's voice trembled, desperation painting her words. The fog pressed against the windows like a living thing, each billow threatening to pull them into the abyss. Marcus's eyes darted to the window, the tales he told flashing through Sarah's mind. "You don't understand," he whispered gravely. "Some places don't let go of what they take." "What do you mean?" Jake's voice quivered, the childlike eagerness crushed under reality. Before Marcus could answer, a cold breeze swept through the room, snuffing out the flickering candlelight. The air grew heavy, filled with the taste of iron and dust. Sarah's heart pounded, a drumming echo of dread. Then came a faint giggle, and it sent chills down her spine. "Lily?" Sarah moved toward the sound, her breath caught. The laughter sounded again, closer this time, piercing through the veil of the fog. It beckoned, playful yet sinister. How could Lily be so close and yet so far? "Mom, I can't stay here," Jake cried, backing away toward the door, eyes filled with panic. The veil of mystery had turned into a relentless nightmare. "No!" Sarah screamed, her voice laced with real fear. "You can't open that door!" But Jake was already lunging, fueled by desperation. He yanked the door open, revealing the thick, haunting fog outside. For a brief moment, the world stood clear before him. Then, dark shapes warped in the mist, looming figures that weren't supposed to exist. Marcus lunged to grab Jake, but it was too late. The fog swallowed him whole, pulling him toward the shadowy figure that had stood sentinel across the street. "Jake!" Sarah shouted, lunging after him, but Marcus blocked her path. "You can't go out there." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "But I have to save him. What if it's too late? What if the fog wants you too?" Marcus's voice trembled, a crack revealing the fear that had crept into his own stories. A low growl rumbled from the depths of the fog, deep and ominous. The ground trembled, and the sound turned into a piercing wail that filled the house with dread. "Lily, come to me!" Sarah called, heart racing as she scanned the room, searching for any sign of her daughter. The laughter had turned sinister, echoing around her like a dark lullaby. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, a small figure materialized from the shadows. "Lily!" The child stood daintily, her face illuminated by a soft glow, a stark contrast against the encroaching darkness. "Mommy, come play!" Lily's voice danced on the wind. "It's so much fun!" She giggled, beckoning Sarah with an outstretched hand. But her eyes? It wasn't her Lily's eyes. They shone with a darkness that sent a jolt of terror through Sarah. "No! Get away from her!" Sarah stumbled back, horror dawning upon her like the grip of an icy hand. The figure stirred restlessly in the fog, an entity that thrived on their fear. As Sarah had a moment of clarity, she felt a pull, a choice resting before her. Save her son or save her daughter? In those split seconds of terror, the shadows pressed closer. The figures gathered, dark and stormy, waiting while the laughter turned into haunting screams. The finality of the moment mirrored her own frantic heartbeat. What was left to choose, with danger closing in? Would Sarah sacrifice everything to break this curse, or would the fog claim them all? And as the walls closed in, a voice lingered in the depths of her mind. Some places don't let go of what they take. The question altered the night. Who would be next to disappear into the mist? Sarah's heart raced as she stood paralyzed, torn between two worlds, the light where her daughter stood and the dark where Jake had been consumed. The echo of Lily's laughter danced around her, each sound laced with a grotesque sweetness that made her skin crawl. The flicker of candlelight had dimmed to near darkness, shadows now stretching like clawed hands reaching for her soul. "Sarah, listen!" Marcus strained to pull her focus. "We can't get stuck in this. We need to get to safety." "Safety? From what?" she cried, eyes fixated on Lily. "That's my little girl. I can't just leave her." Every instinct told her to reach out, to bring Lily back, to save her from whatever had corroded her essence. But just as Sarah took a step forward, the fog twisted around her, a living entity in itself, throwing whispers at her like jagged edges. "They can't have her. They can't take her." Bounced off the walls, drenching her in an icy fear. "Mommy!" The veil of fog shifted, revealing Lily's angelic face shimmering with an otherworldly glow. "You promised you would play with me." "Play?" Sarah gasped. "What do you want from us?" "Just to join us, just to let go." Lily's voice warped, becoming an echo of every child who had been lost to the fog. The chilling realization struck Sarah. The warmth of her daughter was slipping away, replaced by a hollow resonance that thrummed in her chest. "Marcus!" she shouted, her mind racing. "What do we do?" But Marcus had taken steps backward, fear weaving deeper lines into his face. "Some places trap you. You can't win against it. If we don't get out now—" His voice faltered as the shadows pulsed, closing in like a tightening noose. The wailing grew louder, drowning out her frantic thoughts. It reverberated against the walls of the old house, raw and heartbreaking. It felt as if spirits enveloped her, chant-like, pleading for their release. "Help us! Help us!" "Lily!" A desperate cry escaped Sarah's lips. She could barely breathe, the weight of choices locking her limbs in place. But then a fleeting moment of clarity pierced through the chaos. Her maternal instinct surged. "You're not Lily!" she shouted, a raw resolve igniting within her. "You're a monster!" The entity paused, the space around her shivered with tension, and the mist hesitated. For a heartbeat, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Then, as if provoked, the shadows recoiled in rage. "No!" a multitude of voices screeched, drowning out the laughter that had turned sinister. The very air narrowed, squeezing the life out of her, as Marcus too felt the rush of panic. "This isn't just fear, it's hunger!" In the next heartbeat, the fog surged forward, sweeping past her, aiming for the last remnants of warmth it could sense. "Get back!" Sarah screamed, throwing herself in front of the spectral grasp. The sudden movement stirred whatever dark power lurked in the corners. The shadows charged, engulfing Marcus as he reached for her, his face twisted in anguish. "No!" she howled, desperation fueling her. But she was outnumbered. As the figures twisted like dark tendrils around Marcus, she felt her footing slip. She staggered, the room dropping around her, the shadows beckoning in a cruel dance. "Join us," the whispers called, wrapping around her mind, squeezing tighter. The world rapidly began to crumble into the fog, lifting her hopes and shattering them. Shadows formed a part of her blood now. But in this chaos, she still saw Lily, that shimmer of innocence trapped inside something sinister. "No, I won't become one of you!" Sarah shouted defiantly, charging forward, racing against the consuming dark. She could still save Lily, somehow. But could she tame the darkness that hungered for more? Just as hope sparked, an all-encompassing silence fell. The fog trembled, waiting for her next move. And somewhere in the echoes of despair, a new voice emerged, a deeper, darker whisper that wrapped around her like chains. "One last chance will come. Choose wisely. Choose now." What choice remained when every decision could doom her loved ones forever? The silence clawed at Sarah, a tangible entity grating against her nerves. The shadows froze, tension rippling through the air like an electric charge. She could feel the weight of their hunger, the way it clawed at her insides, demanding something in return. What could she give that wasn't already bared before them? "Mommy!" Lily's voice broke through the thick air, desperate yet hollow. "Please, just come here. Everything will be fine." Fine? The word tasted like bile in Sarah's throat. She strained against the creeping shadows while still yearning for her daughter's safety. What's fine about losing you? But the sweet tinkling laughter echoed again, wrapping around her lingering doubt, whispering promises of love and joy. Each note tugged at her heart like a puppet master pulling strings. "Join us. It's better on this side." A flicker of dread ignited within her. She processed Marcus's shriek of terror as the shadows wound tighter around him. The panic etched in his eyes. "Sarah," he choked, his voice a papery whisper. "Run! Get out!" "I can't leave you." The rawness of her voice reflected her desperation, potent against the encroaching darkness. Yet the specter of Lily urged her, and for that moment she swayed between the terrors that loom. "Mommy, I don't want to be alone." That innocence bled through the darkness, creeping into her heart as she caught a glimpse of Lily's face, now distorted with the strain of the mire around them. A shock tore through Sarah. She felt the tendrils of the shadows wrap around her, squeezing tighter. "What a bind you found yourself in," a voice crooned, fading in and out of the whispers, dark and rich like soil soaking a curse. "Choose your burden. The price is steep." The shadows flickered, revealing grotesque figures clutching at Marcus. Each one wore twisted expressions, mere echoes of lives lost to darkness. They locked their deadened eyes on Sarah, and she stumbled back, the sight chilling her to her core. "Well?" the voice mocked, deepening with delightful anticipation. "Will you abandon him, or your darling?" "No!" Sarah screamed, a fierce defiance erupting as she wrestled against the mental chokehold. With one last illuminating thought, she remembered the stories her own mother once told, the power of love and sacrifice. Fueled by a blend of fury and sorrow, Sarah shouted, "If I must choose, I choose love." Moments froze, the room darkening momentarily before the shadows unleashed their wrath. Howling voices erupted, writhing in pure agony at her declaration, their hands now slashing the air, scattering at her declaration like frightened birds. With a rush akin to a gasp of fresh air, the fog shuddered, briefly unraveling its grip. Marcus began to break free, though he was still beset by shadows. Sarah leaped forward, her heart racing against the thundering of rising chaos. "Grab my hand!" The moment stretched, seconds drawn into an eternity. Marcus reached, fingers brushing against hers just as a cacophony erupted. The world spiraled again. The floor shifted and groaned beneath them, separating every connection she longed for. "Come, come, come!" the voices wailed, desperation and fury mingling. In that frantic blur, Sarah felt herself being torn. The fog thickened, wrapping jagged edges of despair around her. The pull was insurmountable. Suddenly, a blinding light pierced through the darkness. "A doorway?" "Go!" Marcus shouted, and for the first time a shard of resolve ignited in his eyes. "Now!" But as she lunged toward the light, a heavy darkness lashed out from the mist, snatching at her, clinging to her desperately. The light flickered perilously, the shadows threatening to extinguish it. "Your choice," the dark panted, curling tighter around her mind. You cannot escape. With a heart thundering in her chest, millions of feelings poured over Sarah, and she knew she couldn't hide away anymore. It was now or never. Just as her fingers grazed the light, a figure lunged from the deepest shadows, one she recognized with gut-wrenching familiarity. The twisted, pale reflection of Jake. And the darkness whispered again, "Join us forever." Sarah gasped, confusion clawing at her sanity. Could she face him? Could she face the truth? In that instant, fear and determination merged within her. Would she leap towards the light, risking every fiber of her being, or would she succumb to the darkness? She gritted her teeth, pushing aside the uncertainty, ready to forge her fate while her heart begged her to reach for love. What would she choose? And then she realized the choice had never truly been hers to make. As the void lunged, she discovered the real horror still awaited her on the other side. "No!" she screamed, but the veil was dropping, silencing her cries. What lay ahead was her greatest nightmare yet. As the veil descended, the piercing light collapsed into darkness, and Sarah felt herself drop into an abyss, weightless and disoriented. Panic blinded her, a swirling mist of terror shrouding her every thought. Suddenly, solid ground slammed against her feet, knocking the breath from her lungs. The air was thick with a rancid odor, a mix of decay and ash. She staggered, fighting to regain her senses. "Mommy?" That sweet, fragile voice echoed through the heavy gloom again. But this time it was laced with unease, a tremor of fear that sent shivers down her spine. "Lily!" she called out, her voice cracking in the oppressive silence. "Where are you?" Desperation clawed at her mind. She spun around, searching for the light, for any sign of her daughter or Marcus. Instead, she found herself alone in a twisted labyrinth of shadows, each corner cloaked in layers of thick darkness. The walls pulsed as if alive, crawling with an unseen pulse like a heart beating in the void. "Come back," a voice hissed, low and raspy, creeping into her ears. From every direction, it sounded like Jake, no, 1,000 Jakes, merging into one haunting whisper. The sound melted into the air, dripping like melting wax. Vivid flashes ignited in Sarah's memory. She remembered laughter, warm and innocent, echoing through their home, candlelight flickering softly. But now those memories twisted and snared her. It was as if the darkness was feeding on her guilt and fear, bending them to its will. "Mommy?" The voice came again, soft as a lullaby, yet tinged with panic. Was that really her Lily, or a dark mimicry crafted by the shadows? A sharp pang of grief pierced through her heart. The thought alone was enough to send her heart racing. "Stop playing with me," she shouted. "Show yourself." The shadows seemed to cackle, swirling around her like a pack of hungry wolves, hungry for her doubt, her fear. Then it came, a flicker of motion in the depths of darkness. A familiar silhouette took shape, luminous yet translucent, her daughter bathed in a faint glow. "Mommy?" Lily's eyes were wide, reflecting terror. But before Sarah could reach her, the ground rumbled and the space seemed to shift. The light flickered with the same rhythm as her racing heart, and from the shadows came the hiss of laughter, echoing loudly. "No!" Sarah cried out, lunging forward. "I'm coming!" Yet just as she reached for Lily's tiny hand, the dark curtain of shadows expanded, swallowing her daughter whole. Lily's terrified scream cut through the silence, and Sarah felt her heart splinter. "Lily, no!" She hurled herself ahead, but the shadows thickened, wrapping around her like ropes, pulling her deeper into despair. "Join her," the voice echoed again, mocking her resolve. "Let us ease your pain." Suffocating dread took hold of Sarah, but just as she felt she might crumble, something flickered deep within her, the faintest spark of a memory. Her mother's voice rose in her mind. Love can conquer the darkest night. Reinvigorated, Sarah summoned every ounce of strength left within her, resolute. "I won't give in." The darkness recoiled, and she pushed through, her fingers clawing at the air, desperate to find her daughter. But the shadows lashed back, striking at her with vicious intensity. The whispers swelled, mingling her fear with taunting promises. "Your love is weakness," they hissed. "It will consume you." Sarah felt the walls pulse, the very air shifting with a malevolent force. Shapes formed in the darkness, twisting and distorting, each one a face she once knew, people who had either loved her or betrayed her. In their eyes she saw judgment. A shattering sadness crashed over her. Had she truly lost Lily? Could she save her, or was she doomed to join this anguished assembly of torment? Overhead, the flickering light began to fade. The glimmer of hope began to slip from her grasp, tethered only to the depths of her resolve. There was no going back. She had to keep fighting. As she pressed forward, an image of a doorway flickered in her mind. It was just a glimmer, and yet it held promise. Would it be the escape she needed? An escape from this living nightmare? But as she moved, a low growl echoed from behind her, a visceral sound that froze the blood in her veins. Oh, you won't escape that easily. What if the darkness unleashed its finest predator upon her? What if the real horror was just beginning? "Mommy!" Lily's voice echoed again, distant yet close enough to shatter her heart. With fear propelling her deeper into the shadows, Sarah clenched her fists. She had to choose, fight the darkness or let it swallow her whole. But was she rational, or had the shadows wormed through her mind, tainting her judgment? The chase escalated. Every heartbeat echoed in the silence. Sarah raced forward, driven by love, haunted by shadows. "Lily!" Her scream splintered through the dark. The shadows writhed in response, readying for their ultimate feast. What awaited her beyond that fading light? Would she grasp it, or would she fall deeper into despair? Sarah stumbled forward, propelled by a mix of urgency and dread. The growl behind her echoed, sharp and hungry, wrapping around her like a noose. She could feel the shadows tightening, the darkness clawing at her heels. But what terrified her most was the echo of Lily's voice, fluttering just beyond reach. "Stay close!" she cried, though deep down she knew it was futile. The shadows twisted, sly and smart, adjusting themselves to her movements, leading her deeper into their suffocating folds. The air felt colder, sharper. Each breath scraped against her throat, forcing her to gasp for air. Suddenly, an image burst against the darkness, a door just like the one from her memory. Hinge squeaks and splintered wood washed over her like a wave of warmth. Hope surged through her veins, igniting a moment of clarity against the encroaching shadows. "Lily!" she shouted again, desperation dripping from her voice. The door flickered faintly, a beacon against the relentless dark. She twisted toward it, but the shadows shrieked, twisting around her legs like snakes, pulling her down. "Join us," they whispered, echoing regrets and memories. Sarah felt the torment of her past seep into her bones, her fears, her failures. Each shadow carried a fragment of her anguish. "Stop!" she screamed, shaking her head, swatting at the darkness like it was a swarm of insects. The door shuddered, a mere 10 steps away, but shrouded in an ever-thickening mist. With every move, it felt as if the shadows were alive, shifting and breathing, congealing into forms that mocked her with familiar faces. Friends, family, those she had lost. "Come back," barked a sinister duplicate of Lily, its eyes black pits. "You can't save her. You know this." "No!" Sarah roared. She kicked free from the grip of the shadows, her mind fighting back, daring them to retreat. "I will find her." But the voice repeated with sickening clarity, "You can't save what's already gone." A pulse of rage ignited within Sarah, igniting her resolve. "You don't know me!" she shouted as she launched herself forward, ripping the invisible ropes apart, stumbling past the writhing forms, racing toward the door that beckoned her. As she tore free, the shadows howled, an anguished cry that reverberated through her core. The walls began to close in, and she barreled toward the doorway, desperate. Time stretched, every heartbeat felt like an eternity. Would she make it? Just as her hands reached for the door, she felt a piercing pain in her side. A stinging, cold grasp from the darkness yanked her back. She could feel the spectral fingers wrapping tightly around her, pulling her into the depths. Screaming, she wrenched herself free, adrenaline surging through her. "Lily!" Her voice cracked, desperation fueling her limbs. She launched forward again, her fingers brushing the door surface, barely tangible. But in that instant of contact, the door shimmered and the shadows recoiled. A split-second realization coursed through her. They feared the light. She mustered every ounce of strength and pushed against the door with everything she had. A blinding white light exploded from the door, illuminating the shadows, scattering them like ashes in a tempest. The cry of sorrow pierced the air, drowning around her like thunderous waves. But Sarah didn't hesitate. She flung the door open, stepping into the promise of freedom. But the moment she crossed the threshold, the shadows screeched, transforming into a chaotic whirl of darkness, swirling back together behind her, forcing the door to slam shut. "Hurry!" she heard a voice, straining against the blare of darkness. A voice that sounded hauntingly familiar, yet filled with urgency. "Lily?" Sarah's heart raced. The voice seemed to echo from a hidden place just out of sight. But in the flickering shadows, they revealed something horrifying, a distorted version of her daughter's silhouette. "What have you done?" it hissed, now gripping the fabric of the void around Sarah. "You think you can leave us?" Just as realization set in, Sarah's world twisted. The light flickered, the boundary between sanctuary and horror blurring. Somewhere deep in the dark, a child cried. Desperation clawed at her throat, a visceral terror that gripped her heart. Was this only the beginning? What else lay hidden in the brooding shadows, waiting to be unleashed? What had she awakened? The shadows writhed around Sarah, twisting into grotesque forms that seemed to mock her every breath. The silhouette of her daughter flickered like a faulty bulb, and a chill raced down Sarah's spine. "Lily!" she screamed, her throat raw with panic. The distorted image stared back, a twisted semblance of innocence marred by darkness. "Your light has only made us stronger," it snarled, the grin stretching wider, revealing teeth that were too sharp and too many. Sarah's heart raced. Was she even talking to her daughter anymore? Panic surged as tendrils of shadows slithered across the ground, inching toward her. "I won't let you take her," Sarah cried, but courage faltered against fear. The shadows laughed. Cacophony of voices echoing her failures, the time she had felt powerless. "You're alone, Sarah," they taunted. With every ounce of will, she took a step back, and the shadows lunged forward, thirsting for her life, for her despair. They whispered promises of safety, of letting her retreat into a memory of rustling leaves and warm sunlight. But she refused to yield. "No!" she shouted. She felt a surge of defiance, igniting a flicker of light deep inside her. It was dim, but even the faintest glow could pierce the suffocating dark. "Not like this," she whispered, the strength building within. She reached for the warmth inside her, hoping to transform it into something tangible. The tendrils hesitated, flinching back, and she took another step. "Lily needs me. I will find her." The darkness shrieked, a sound so unnatural it made her skin prickle. With renewed resolve, Sarah focused on the source of her light, the love that had been guiding her. It surged forward, illuminating her surroundings like a tiny star fighting against the vast night. Suddenly, the shadows screamed, twisting and contorting wildly. The distorted figure of Lily wailed, its voice ripping at Sarah's heart. "You can't escape this. You've opened a door." The walls seemed to vibrate with the truth, the reality of her actions crashing into her like a tidal wave. A swirling vortex opened behind the distorted Lily, a gateway that pulsated with shadowed fingers reaching for Sarah. Instinctive terror coursed through her. She glanced back toward the door, which felt so far away now. "Fight it," she shouted, drawing strength from the memory of her daughter's laughter. "You're stronger than the dark." The shadows recoiled, howling in agony. Sarah rushed toward the spectral Lily, determination replacing fear. The air thickened as she approached, suffocating her again, but something about that shimmering madness caught her breath. "Lily, come back," she urged, reaching out. The thin, stretched visage flickered, wavering like a candle in a storm. Dark tendrils wrapped around her, pulling her back with merciless grip, yanking her away from the memory she was trying to grasp. With one final cry, the light pulsed, a fierce white brilliance exploding outward. The shadows shrieked, recoiling, backing into the maw of their home. Sarah lunged forward, her fingers brushing against the writhing mass, feeling the edge of familiar warmth. But as she pushed further, the ground cracked, a powerful tremor shattering her balance. Faces emerged within the dark, shadowy remnants of her past, each one siphoning her strength. "Stay with us," they beckoned softly, their voices a haunting blend of comfort and despair. "No more!" Sarah shouted, her voice edged with defiance. "You can't take me!" With everything she had left, fueled by the weight of her love for Lily, Sarah leaped forward, plunging into the vortex. Light erupted, and she felt herself torn apart by the collision of realities, torn between the warmth of hope and the chill of despair. As everything around her began to dissolve and chaos, she wondered, would she reach her daughter, or would the shadows claim them both? The scream of shadows echoed louder as darkness wrapped around her, threatening to swallow her whole. Was this the end, or just another beginning? They had awakened something far beyond her understanding, a force that could take them both. What awaited her on the other side? Sarah fell through the vortex, swallowed by a howling abyss that tossed her around like a leaf in a storm. The last remnants of warmth slipped through her fingers as she cried out for her daughter, her voice barely piercing the clamor of despair. Coldness seeped into her very bones, dragging her down into an incomprehensible void. And just as quickly as it started, it ended. With a jolt, Sarah landed on something solid, the ground beneath her feeling like broken glass. She gasped, jolted by sharp, stinging pain. Slowly, she opened her eyes to find herself in a place that was dimly lit, yet seemed to shimmer with a faint, sickly glow. Around her stretched a landscape twisted with nightmare visions. Jagged spires rose like broken teeth from a sea of thick, undulating fog. The air was heavy with the scent of rotting earth. She could hear whispers, weaving through the shadows that danced along the path ahead, curling around her ankles like icy fingers intent on pulling her down. The chilling voices called out. Some were familiar, others foreign, and they lurked just beyond her sight, teasing her mind with haunting echoes. Panic yanked at her heart, constricting it until she felt she might suffocate. "Lily!" she cried again, her voice trembling as dread filled her. It was here, in this twilight realm, where shadows lurked with intent, and each footfall echoed with uncertainty. She stumbled forward, each movement pushing through the thick fog like wading through tar. "Find her," a voice urged from the shadows, a silky whisper that slid under her skin, freezing her resolve. "She is close." Sarah clutched her head, trying to dismiss the sound. She couldn't trust these things. Images flooded her mind, memories entwined with a darkness that gnawed at her soul. Faces of the lost put forth pleading expressions, their eyes reflecting desperation. She recognized them, friends, family, even strangers caught in their own nightmares. They reached out, hands expending, their mouths moving, but no sound emerged, just a cacophony of muted pleas. "No!" she screamed, a surge of anger propelling her forward. Each step was strained against the weight of their despair. "I'm not here for you. Get away from me." But the shadows only laughed, a sickening sound that wrapped around her. "You cannot escape the bonds of fate," they hissed. "You came here by choice, by the darkness you succumbed to." The fog shifted at her feet, coiling like smoke. A chilling realization dawned on her, a reflection of her own fears. Each shadowy whisper punctured her psyche like a shard of glass, leaving her light flickering dimly. "Not true. I'm here for Lily."
"I have to find her." "You are lost like the others," they chanted as shadows swirled and thickened around her, the very air tightening into suffocating silence. With raw desperation, Sarah pushed through the despair, forcing her legs to carry her onward. The path grew darker, edged with grotesque trees that twisted upward into gnarled hands clawing at the sky. Then she felt it, a presence, something familiar and warm that beckoned her, slicing through the darkness like a beacon of light.
"Lily!"
she gasped, recognizing the faint glimmer of warmth growing in her heart. But the shadows twisted tighter, erupting into terrible shapes that sought to ensnare her. "You cannot hold on," they snarled, crashing against her resolve like waves against sunken rocks. "You came uninvited." Each scream bounced back and forth, a distorted echo of terror. Sarah felt the urge to flee, but she locked her gaze onto that warm glow, sharpening her focus, her heart pulsing with fierce determination. The shadows felt so much heavier now, as if they bore down upon her. "Hold on, baby," she whispered into the darkness, a mantra against the encroaching fear. "I'll get us out." With every ounce of faith she could muster, she propelled herself towards the light, ignoring the shadowy hands that tugged and pulled at her. Just as it seemed she would be swallowed whole, inspiration struck, a memory of Lily singing, her laughter like a chorus of angels. Then a breakthrough. The shadows screamed, dissolving around her, yielding for a brief moment. She charged ahead, an instinctive rush pushing her forward. Would she reach Lily? What awaited her at the heart of this chaos, waiting to unleash its true wrath? Just as Sarah crossed the threshold, the world shattered, twilight turning to white. The ground beneath her shifted, and she realized this was just the precipice. What lay beyond? A fateful reunion, or something darker? The white light swallowed Sarah whole, blinding her momentarily before it faded into an eerie gray haze. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear her vision, confusion swirling in her mind. With the shadows behind her momentarily silenced, the air chilled her skin, an unexpected forecast of incoming dread. She stood once again on solid ground, but it felt alive, twitching beneath her feet like a living thing. The terrain was spongy, the ground squishing each time she took a step. A faint, silent whimper drifted from nearby, piercing the muted stillness. Her heart raced. Was it Lily? "Lily!" she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. She stumbled forward, half aware that something deep within her was shifting. The air thickened around her, imbued with a smell that turned her stomach. It was rot, but not just any rot. It was the scent of something long dead, something that had been alive, but was now just an echo of its former self. Behind her, the shadows stirred, no longer laughing, but murmuring in suspense. She turned, half expecting to see the familiar frightful forms jolting closer. Instead, it was just the mist that hung, entwined like phantom fingers reaching for her back. They seemed to whisper her name, plucking her thoughts like strings of a broken guitar. She forced herself to look away, focusing on the sound of whimpering that now seemed closer. "Lily," she pleaded again, fear wrapping around her like a tight noose. The sound edged up to a sob. Panic surged through her veins, igniting her senses. If it was Lily, she had to find her. The landscape morphed as she walked, grotesque trees bending under a weight of darkness she felt clinging to her heels. Hollow eyes in the bark of the trees gazed at her, reflecting back her terror. The horizon flickered from gray to black, smeared across an endless sky. Then she saw it. A flicker of light far in the distance caught her eye, a glimmer like a firefly. Hope igniting, she sprinted toward it, heedless of the tangled roots that tried to trip her, clawing at her feet. Every step was fueled by a relentless drive, the sobs growing clearer with each desperate leap. "Hold on, baby, I'm coming." As she neared, the light took shape, small and flickering, like a candle guttering in the wind. She pushed through the thick fog, reaching out, desperate to latch on to that warmth. But just as she was about to grasp it, the light dimmed, swallowing her scream as it snuffed out, plunging her into darkness once more. The whimper stopped abruptly. Silence enveloped her again, thick and suffocating. The ground shifted as if breathing, and she felt an overwhelming urge to turn back. Something wasn't right. But every instinct in her drove her to continue, to search. "Please," she whispered, each syllable trembling with anxiety, "where are you?" And then she heard it again. This time it was more than just a whimper. It was a voice, soft, fragile, carrying across the void. "Mommy?" Sarah's heart shattered at the sound. It was Lily. She called back with all the strength she could muster. "I'm here! I'm right here!" The shadows gathered closer, swirling with malice, urging her to fall back. "You should not have come," they hissed, their voices like jagged glass scraping against her mind. "You will lose her!" "Shut up!" Sarah screamed, defiance bursting forth. "I won't lose her!" The darkness coiled tighter around her, a living thing pushing her away from the direction of the voice that filled her with a gleam of hope. "Mommy?" The voice faded, drawing back into the depths. "No!" Panic gripped her. Was she too late? She strained against the dark tendrils pulling her apart. Turning toward that fading echo, she pushed harder, her resolve solidifying against the fear, a fierce determination igniting her every step. And just as she thought she could reach her daughter, the ground trembled violently, sending her crashing down into another chasm of darkness. Whatever had grappled her spirit had loosened its hold for now, but how long until it returned? And where was
"Lily?" In the dark, she inhaled sharply, the frigid air slicing at her lungs. The shadows sneered, weaving closer. "You came uninvited," they echoed, their unity sailing above her gasping breaths. "You will never find her now." Was this the end? The chilling question lingered, gnawing at her resolve. What if she would never see Lily again?
What lay beneath the depths of darkness? And at that moment of uncertainty, Sarah's heart responded. This fight was far from over. In the depths of that haunting darkness, Sarah grappled with despair, her heart pulsing wildly in her chest. The shadows shifted, alive with ancient malice, but she felt a flicker of hope deep inside. She had battled demons before, metaphorical ones, yes, but this felt different. This felt real, raw, and impossibly dark. Yet love coursed through her veins, igniting a defiance that couldn't easily be quenched. "Lily, I'm coming!" she shouted into the void, her voice steadying as it echoed through the endless night. The shadows hissed, slithering toward her with insidious intent, but she pressed forward. Every step was a declaration, a refusal to yield to the faint, flickering voice of doubt that lingered at the edge of her consciousness. "Why do you fight?" the shadows intoned, their voices a sickening serenade. "You seek that which is lost. What if she is beyond reach?" "Not if I say she isn't," Sarah replied fiercely, her voice rising like a battle cry. She could still hear Lily's soft, sweet voice, that fragile light within her soul, urging her onward. With renewed ferocity, she plunged deeper into the swirling fog, her resolve unyielding. Sounds distanced into the din, as she thought only of her daughter, of reunions, laughter, and the warmth of her hug. The shadows writhed at her heels, twisting like tortured souls desperate for rest. "Mommy!" Lily's voice emerged again, clearer this time, wrapped in a promise of reunion. "Mommy, please!" "Hold on, I'm almost there!" Sarah screamed, grief and urgency propelling her as she stumbled across the uneven ground. The darkness felt relentless, but she felt a shift. A light flickered beyond the canopy of shadows. The air buzzed, thickening and saturating with unearthly energy, drawing her closer to that beckoning call. As she closed in, she recognized it. The space where fear and love collided, the path aligned somewhere in the silence. The realization surged through her. It didn't matter how far Lily had slipped into the shadows. The bond they shared was stronger than any cursed curse that held them apart. In a whirlwind of energy, the shadows began twisting. They wrapped tighter, yet she felt the tendrils weaken in her presence like a frightened child. "Leave her!" Sarah shouted, and to her surprise, they recoiled as if stung by her defiance. "You can't keep us apart!" And then, out of that mournful fog, she saw her. A flicker of an ethereal glow danced within the dark, sparkles akin to starlight. But there was Lily's essence, bound yet free in a way she hadn't thought possible. Her daughter stood, caught in the precarious balance of light and dark. "Mommy, help!" Lily reached out, her small fingers extended, and Sarah felt her heart lurch. The echoes of shadows screamed as they reacted, feral and furious, but Sarah moved, unstoppable now. "Just a little more," she called back, racing to her daughter's side, her resolve burning hotter. As she moved, the shadows screamed louder, unraveling in a frenzy, but the bond they had woven together ignited even more fiercely. "Lily!" she cried, reaching out as warm light shone between them. "I'm scared," Lily whispered, her voice shaking like a fragile leaf caught in a storm. "You're safe, you're safe." Sarah pressed on, her heart racing faster, as she grasped Lily's fingers tightly. The moment their hands connected, warmth surged between them, breaking the dark's hold like thunderclaps in the stillness. The shadows recoiled, shrieking and writhing, bits of darkness dispersing, as if spat out by the very light surrounding mother and daughter. "We can do this together!" Sarah shouted, pouring everything she was into that moment. The shadows, once looming and omniscient, melted back, obscuring their forms, as light shoved darkness backwards, and the howling grew desperate.
Then a brilliant flash erupted, enveloping them in warmth. The shadows screamed, their voices disintegrating into mist, swirling away like ashes caught in a fierce wind. And just like that, the oppressive shroud faded, leaving behind a serene quiet. With that silence came clarity, their reality shifting, revealing endless possibility. Lily looked up at her mother, and in that moment, everything was perfect again. "I knew you'd find me," Lily said, her eyes wide and bright, untainted by the dark. "I will always find you," Sarah replied, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks, the remnants of fear dissolving into the warmth of their love. They embraced tightly, their spirits entwined, not just as mother and daughter, but as warriors who had pushed beyond the void together. As they stepped back toward the brilliant light, Sarah felt a weight lift, the suffocating tendrils of shadow finally dissipating, fate itself turning away, crossing them back into the world of color and warmth. Together, they emerged into the pale dawn, a new day stretching out before them, painted in hues of orange and pink. The air sparkled with promise, a world reborn. Safe, together, they turned back to their home. The familiar felt fresh, and hope breathed anew. But thoughts lingered of the shadows that could return. "Remember, my love," Sarah whispered, clutching Lily's hand. "Some places still keep their darkness, but we will face them, together, always." "Always," Lily chimed back, her giggle bubbling into the morning air, a sound brighter than the sun itself. With that, they walked home, a bond forged in light and shadow, eternally secured in love, the only power strong enough to conquer the cursed places, dictated by fear, warping the heart of the world around them. It was just the beginning of what lay ahead, but together they would.
Find a way. Now you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this amazing tale. Only true fans understand how crucial your support is.